So as we move on in his exposition here, we're on page 3, we see that he talks about other duties and how they may or may not coincide with our inclinations and how this has an effect on whether we believe they have, as he calls it here, genuine moral worth. To be beneficent, to be helpful to others is a duty. He mentions that one. To secure one's own happiness is a duty. Doing that for yourself. Then he moves on to something else, and this is sort of, if we go here, back to our original questions. There is something good in itself, he says, and that's a good will. But what is a good will? How do we know that the will is good? Well, the key concept here is duty. A good will is that which is prompted by a recognition of duty. A moral action or a morally good action is always done out of a sense of duty, but I think it's very fair to ask, and he sort of is asking, what is duty? What does it mean to do something out of duty? Which I think is a great question. And here, it's a very important step. Think about this word duty. And think about the kind of word it is. It's what I don't know if there's a good way of describing it except that it's an incomplete word. And by incomplete, I mean that it always points to something else. It always suggests something else. It's like the word symbol. Something is a symbol, okay, but it's always a symbol of something. Something is a duty, sure, but that means it's always a duty to something. And that's what I mean by it's an incomplete word. It points it beyond itself. It implies something else, and it wouldn't make any sense unless there were that something else. So, what is duty? What does it mean to do something out of duty? Well, I mean, duty to what? What is it that that Kant is really talking about here? This is on page 4. He says the second proposition is that an action done from duty derives its moral worth not from the purpose, which is to be attained by it, but from the maxim by which it is determined. The maxim, the rule by which it is determined. And therefore does not depend on the realization of the object of the action, but merely on the principle of volition by which the action is taking place without regard to any object of desire. So it's the maxim or rule that by which the duty is determined that matters. But it can't be just any old rule. What kind of rule? It is clear from what precedes that the purposes which we may have in view in our actions, that is, the ends or goals, or their effects regarded as ends and springs of the will, cannot give to actions any unconditional or moral worth. But as the results of an action are not what give it worth. It's the intention behind it, and that intention is being done out of a sense of duty. In what, then, can their worth lie if it is not to consist in the will and in reference to its expected effect? It cannot lie anywhere but in the principle of the will without regard to the ends which can be attained by the action. For the will stands between its a priori principle, which is formal, and its a posteriori spring, which is material. We'll be talking about the a priori and a posteriori distinction as between two roads. And as it must be determined by something, it that it must be determined by the formal principle of volition when an action is done from duty, in which case every material principle has been withdrawn from it. So the only moral action is the action done from a sense of duty or done from a recognition of duty. Okay, but duty to what? He's already said, well, what matters is the rule or maxim of action that determines duty. But what is that rule or maxim of action? He says, third proposition, which is a consequence of the two preceding. I would express thus, comma, or colon, duty is the necessity of acting from respect for the law. And there it is. Duty is always duty to something. And in this case here, law means moral law. So there we are. I think what matters is the will behind an action, and what makes an action a good action is that it's motivated by a good will. But what is a good will? A good will is a will motivated by a recognition of duty. But duty to what? Well, duty to the moral law. And that's it. That's the last sort of level. That's the foundation. That is that morality is about doing what we have to do, doing the right thing, whether we like it or not. And that means doing things out of duty, that we have a duty to do them. It doesn't matter if they make us happy or not. We have to do them because we have a duty to do them. And those things that we have a duty to do are those things that we are commanded to do by the moral law. And I think you can anticipate what my next question is. You got it, right? Yes. There we go.